All right, folks, hello everybody, and welcome to another exciting Uski and Herbie here on August 5th. Just got back from vacation, so I was not in Jamaica. I was at the Outer Banks, so just give everybody where we were. So I'm Chris Seidel. I'm in the Baltimore office, and Ewan McCreef, or Uski, is down in the Charlotte office, who's working on upgrading the facilities. So.
We got to wait for that booster money to come in.
Yeah, it's called the government. So, we got a big show on tonight. We're going to be talking a lot of ACC, SEC football because the SEC decided to get rid of non-conference games for this year, and the ACC didn't get the memo, so they have to find their own one non-conference game, and we'll talk with Notre Dame football as well. And also we'll have the voice of the Carolina Panthers coming on. Mick Mixon will be joining us. We'll talk Panther football. It's going to be some fun time down in Charlotte this year with a brand new system, brand new coach, brand new everything, right, Uski?
Oh, unquestionably. I mean, you talk about a changing of the guard. We couldn't possibly have any more changes headed into a season. New quarterback, new coach, as you mentioned, a plethora of draft picks. We're excited about football again in Carolina.
Yeah, we're excited about football as well, and today the Big Ten brought out their schedule for the football games and dates, so it's going to be all Big Ten schedule for them, and also the college football playoff made some adjustments as well. So they're going to be they're not going to pick the final teams up to probably December 19th is the final date they could do it.
Well, Herbie, I'm disappointed. My UConn Huskies, we decided to cancel our season, so I'm not even going to be able to sleep tonight.
I was going to ask you about that.
You had it ready?
I had it ready to go. Like, what's going on there? Is Randy Edsel running away or something? Or?
I hope we don't see it across the college football landscape, but it's just the reality of the times that we're in. But I don't know how we're climbing up a steep hill in terms of talent and competitiveness anyway. Losing a whole season is just tough.
Yeah. Well, that's their first season independent, so they're going to be behind now. So speaking of not being behind, this independent school actually woke up this morning, last week, and realized they got to join a conference for just 1 year. And I love the way they did this because they told everybody, look, I got NBC money. You want it or not? So that's the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame. We got George Bashura with us on the program here. So George, how's everything going there in they're in Indiana? You guys getting ready for conference play for the first time since whenever?
Someone say ACC football? Did someone say Notre Dame's playing in a conference?
Yeah, right, George.
Notre Dame. I got to give Notre Dame applause here. You dingled the NBC contract over everybody and go, hey, do you want some of this?
Right.
We will give you this if you let us come in this year. And after next year, you can all go fly a kite.
Money talks and everything else walks.
Exactly. He does a place called Shakedown Thunder. It's a publication you do, and you do a lot of stuff there in South Bend. You live outside of South Bend, Indiana, right?
I live in Osceola, about 15 minutes off of campus.
Okay.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful.
It's a perfect commute home.
Nice. Yeah.
George, are you too old to sneak into some of those fraternity parties? Yikes! I'm just asking what Chris is thinking.
Unshaven, no. Shaven, possibly.
So, George, let's talk about the Irish. First of all, last three seasons, 33-6 record, but it seems like every year, everybody in every publication, every Notre Dame fan you talk to, everybody's grandmother who is a Notre Dame fan wants Brian Kelly's head on a platter. Why?
I just think that what happens is that there's a lot of living in the past. Football has changed from the 80s to the year 2020. I think that there's people just looking for that championship. But recruiting is not the same. Notre Dame recruits across the country. where most folks are just, into their section of the country, whatever. But it's also harder to land a candidate because of education standards. So, you got to weed through, can the student athlete succeed on and off the field as being in the classroom. And it's hard to pull from that pot.
That's true.
George, I hear you, man. Last year, impressive numbers for the Irish: 431 yards per game, 37 points per game. New offensive coordinator Chip Long coming in. What do you see as the production this year in comparable to those stats I just read you?
Well, I think part of that is the whole. I think it's going to be improved offense. I really, really do. I think that it's going to give Book more maneuverability. I mean, we saw that in the later parts of the season, right? You saw the opportunities of, him trying to be stuck in the pocket versus, him being able to move around, use his feet as a secondary weapon. That was kind of a disadvantage him for a part of the season. They didn't fully utilize him to his full capability.
Well, we got to talk about this ACC schedule. Is it good or bad for Notre Dame to join the ACC this year? Because if you look at your schedule, this is a lot better than you had before. You had, I know you have to take on Navy. Is that Navy game still going?
That is still when they announce the schedule tomorrow, I'm assuming that they're going to announce that non-conference game. It would have to be at Notre Dame, by the way, if it's going to be Navy. So once again, I'm glad I'm not the athletic director at the University of Notre Dame.
Yeah, I like your home schedule. You got Clemson, Syracuse, Duke. I guess I may have to visit George's couch when Florida State comes to town. Some free amenities.
There's room at the International House of Bashura. Absolutely.
Hey, George, we talked. You touched base a little bit about the offense. We mentioned Chip Long, but I wanted to get your opinion on Tommy Rees. He's a 28, former Irish quarterback, and he's going to run the offense. What kind of wrinkles does he bring, and what does he bring to the table in your estimation?
Well, kind of going back to what I said earlier, I think you saw a lot of Tommy Rees in the second half of the season. I think that there was a lot of practice there of getting him comfortable to call a game under somebody else's tutelage. And now giving him the reins to go do that, I expect to see more actually from Book this year, and from different schemes on offense. I'm hoping to see a little more, maybe going with trying to develop some type of triple threat. Maybe throw a tight end, throw an extra tight end out there on the end, and try and do something with working with the running backs. That you have to figure out who you're going to cover, because if you have threats at certain positions, you can't cover everybody. So developing that triple threat, I think, is going to be a really big key to the season, especially going into the ACC and facing those teams.
Yeah, George, is Tommy Rees grown up? Because I know when he was the quarterback for the Irish, a lot of people gave him a lot of nicknames. Like one of my friends called him Reese's Pieces, and other different names and all that stuff. Do you feel like he's grown up and being that, now he's a coach and he's taking all what Brian Kelly showed him and actually turning it into something positive?
I think everyone needs their chance. I think, I'll go with my career. My career in aerospace, I need a chance to be able to go in and prove myself and grow into my position and mature. Notre Dame does not do bad things for Notre Dame. So they're not going to go in putting themselves at risk if they don't think that Tommy Rees can do this job. He's going to have people there that are going to be a support system. And it's like everything else. You put good people around you to succeed. And I think that's really what's going to happen here with Tommy Rees. I don't even call it an experiment. I say this is Brian Kelly, 100% confidence in Tommy Rees and running that offense.
Hey, George, I wanted to ask you, Herbie touched on television, and certainly there's more money than we've ever seen, and I don't see it ever stopping with television contracts, the college football playoffs, so on and so forth. But do you think that How can that be a deterrent when, well, obviously no one's walking into a recruit's house, but how much does that play a part, the contract with NBC, knowing that, if you go to this school, you're going to be on national television every week? How big is that in terms of a recruiting pitch for Coach Kelly?
I think that's actually kind of changed because you can go to any school on any given Saturday and you're going to be on TV. I mean, ACC has the ACC network.
Right.
So those games are going to get television coverage some way, somehow through the ACC. So I think it used to play into why Notre Dame was so dominant on Saturday afternoons was because everybody wanted to get that airtime on TV and perform, every week and do that job interview. But I think nowadays everyone has that opportunity in whatever conference you're in to be on TV at any given time.
Yeah. Well, the ACC network, or you want to call it the Pack and Durham network, because I think that Pack and Durham's on every night.
Yeah. Well, I gotta keep again beating on Xfinity to get the ACC network because I don't know how I'm going to watch other games otherwise. It's going to be kind of difficult trying to see the away games because they won't be televised to the area if you don't have the ACC network.
So you're gonna take all the away games, but on the ACC network. I thought they're gonna be like switching back and forth with ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPNU. Like here's on ABC. Prime time. Notre Dame, Clemson, probably.
I'm not leaving anything to chance.
Exactly. Well, George, tell everybody about your publication because I know I discovered you last year on a teleconference call, and we're like, who are you guys and where do you guys come from? So explain to everybody where you guys are and what you guys have been doing since we last had you on the air.
Well, Shakedown of Thunder Sports, we kind of evolved 2 years ago, and we're doing pretty good with followership and stuff. I'm actually using StreamYard now to do my podcasts. So thanks to you guys, I was able to find the software.
Nice.
We need advertising. We need StreamYard to advertise us. We're helping them out, getting new people on every week. Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm using StreamYard now." They
got to give you guys some royalties.
I know.
Yeah. I'll vouch for that. So it's been kind of tough. Coverage of sports has been kind of difficult because how do you mix with what's going on in the country right now and in writing sports? Okay.
Right.
I probably went into kind of a low there for a while, not trying to figure out what's the right point to get in. There was an event a couple weeks ago when nostalgia came around about the change of the name of the school. So that kind of reinvigorated me, and we've been going really good since. Mm-hmm. But we're out there on Instagram, we're out there on Twitter, all by the same handle, and we're bringing a new writer on board this season. So very excited about that, kind of trying to grow the team a little bit.
Yep.
So hopefully some big things for the team this year. Hopefully there's some games for us to cover.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I do need to ask you one more question. Do you want to have Florida State in the warm climate or the cold climate? Because the last time we played you guys, it was 14 degrees, and my buddy is still thawing out right now.
So, I by the way, I want to say that I called snow for that game 3 weeks before that game was played.
Yeah.
So I said it's gonna snow for that game, and sure enough, but the folks in the press box really hated me because I was correct, and we all froze at the end of the game outside.
Yeah, I remember
so
that.
I don't care where we play Florida State. What it's going to come down to is Notre Dame doing really well in the ACC, and hopefully not just playing Clemson once, but playing twice, which would hopefully seal them a chance to go to the college football playoffs.
Hey, if you guys go to the ACC title game, maybe a Hotel Ewan might be available.
Come on down, George. I know we'll stop, buddy.
That'd be awesome. I'll even bring a mask.
We're not. We're a little bit more laid back in North Carolina, my man. So yeah, some of us aren't believing the pandemic, but hey, it's all good.
Yeah.
All right, George. Well, have a great rest of your Wednesday night, and we'll talk to you. Hopefully, we'll find out what the schedule is tomorrow, and we'll find out who plays Notre Dame the first week in September.
Hopefully, we can settle the fans down a little bit with the schedule release.
Right on. Thanks, George.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Good to be back.
All right, man. Thanks, buddy.
Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye later. All right, folks. That's our good friend George Bashura, who covers the Irish out there in Indiana for Shakedown Thunder Sports. And it's going to be very wild this year seeing Notre Dame in a conference game. And I asked my expert, Matt, who comes on once in a while here, Chuck and Elliott, and I said, what do you think about you joining the ACC for a year? And he goes, well, I could win a conference title.
Yeah. Okay. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be great to see. Yeah. I mean, Notre Dame, Clemson, bring it.
Yeah. Speaking of conference titles, we have this gentleman coming on, Marc Weiszer, who covers the. He's no stranger for this area. He's from my area. He's from the Baltimore, Washington metro area, and he's coming on. He covers the dogs down there in Georgia, the Bulldogs. Mark, thanks for joining us. I hope I didn't map up your last name. Is it Weiszer?
Weiszer, yeah. I think you got it eventually, so that works.
All right, cool. I've been practicing all day today. So we're good. We're on our A game. Let's talk about what's about this no Georgia Tech game for the first time since I think Calvin Coolidge was in office, 1924. So what's going on down there in Georgia? What's the economic impact for those teams not playing each other?
That's actually a pretty good question. I haven't checked that out in particular, but usually it's Georgia fans filling up the Georgia Tech stadium because they're a little bit more passionate, I would say. But they had to make do. They had to switch it up because SEC went to conference only schedule, and everybody was gone. Virginia was supposed to play, Georgia as well, and that was wiped out. So we're still waiting on the last two teams in the SEC schedule. Georgia had 8, already, and they're waiting. Maybe tomorrow they'll announce, whether they're going to play an LSU or an Arkansas, Mississippi State. Someone else is going to be joining the schedule.
Yeah.
Mark, I wanted to ask you, it just seems every year Georgia just gets so close. I have a good friend of mine who's a Bills fan, and, you've been around this program, and we don't want to, look over anything controversial, but I got to ask you, from a guy who's covered, a lot has been made about your former quarterback, Buffalo Bill now, Jake Fromm. What did you get a sense? I mean, you've been around this program, you've been around him, certainly. Could you just give us a sense of what your impressions are of this young man?
I've said before, we have a pretty good feel, we think, of who these guys are from covering Jake for 3 years and him being available probably more than any other player. He's a starting quarterback for the Bulldogs. I talked to him about 3 or 4 days before the draft. Then that after he was a 5th round pick, I don't know, was it a week later or something like that, or maybe several weeks later? I don't remember what the timeline was. The text message came out, and you really can't defend what he said and what happened, and he's going to have to repair himself with that locker room and the fan base. And some people thought he might have gotten cut as a 5th round pick. He wasn't a 1st rounder, but they stuck with him, and we'll see how it plays out. It was a question anyway whether he was going to have a successful NFL career, and now he's got to fight through that character issue that he has.
Yeah, in a world that's so heavily dominated by recruiting, tell us about some of the freshmen that are coming in to Georgia that can make a potential impact right away this season.
Yeah, with Georgia, there's always like a handful of 5-star guys that you could I think Broderick Jones is a guy that's got a good chance to be kind of an Andrew Thomas, who was a 1st-round, top 5 overall pick for the Giants. He was a 5-star from the Atlanta area, and Georgia lost 2 first-rounders. They lost Isaiah Wilson also to the Titans. So he has a chance to come in and win a starting job right away. And the fact that the season's pushed almost to October probably helps him in terms of getting in camp and being able to compete and show what he can do. Now, he had a little off-field injury that he's going to have to work through. But I expect, by the end of September, he'll definitely factor in there. Cornerback out of Arizona, Keely Ringo is another guy. They're pretty deep in the secondary. They don't necessarily need him, but he'll find a role. And 5-star talent. He's here for 3 years, I'm sure. So they probably want to make the most of what he can bring right away.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, I got to ask you. I was talking to Josh Moore this afternoon from Lexington. He does the Kentucky Wildcats and all that stuff. And the Wildcats are going to save $2 million just playing conference games this year. Is that a good thing for the Bulldogs, saving some money on travel? Because what's the farthest thing place they go to in the SEC?
They have a road game at Missouri, so that's the furthest this year. They have to pay, unless the lawyers work it out, they have $1.8 million, something like that, with Louisiana Monroe, $550,000 with East Tennessee State. So they might have to write some checks. That's going to cost them money, but their recruiting budgets very much diminished because they haven't been able to go on the road recruiting, and they spent more than anyone else in the country in recruiting in the last couple of years. So they probably lose a little bit with the expenses, or lose a good bit, and probably obviously aren't going to be bringing in the same amount of revenues either.
Mark, is this the year Georgia beats Alabama?
We might find out pretty soon. I mean, be curious to see if that's the September 26th opener. Georgia was supposed to play them on the 19th. They got to go to Tuscaloosa, but they're not going to have to deal with 100,000 fans at least.
Right.
Maybe it'll be 25,000. I'm not sure what that number is going to be, but certainly, I mean, they've proven that they can play with that team. A couple of really good championship games in the national championship game and the SEC championship game, and their roster probably just as talented in terms of the recruiting rankings the last few years. So I don't know if it's going to come down to Nick Saban versus Kirby Smart, and Kirby needs to be able to show that he can be that in-game coach and win those kind of games. He beat Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. He hasn't beaten his mentor yet.
Yeah, and that game will probably be on the SEC network, on the SEC on CBS, or will that be on the ABC?
Well, it won't be on ABC. Maybe CBS or ESPN, and I'm not sure what the selections are going to be. I don't know. Obviously, with all the sports kind of cranking up at the same time, it's trying to get them in. If there is a season, I would guess it would be the CBS 3:30 Saturday window.
Hey, Mark, we always talk about the importance of out-of-conference games in terms of national ranking, strength of schedule, what have you. Do you think that it affects the SEC a little less because their conference is from top to bottom, and in my opinion, and I think Herb would join me on that, the most competitive?
I don't know. I mean, Georgia and Alabama and everyone else is seeming to go in a different direction, and that they're trying to schedule, as rugged a schedule as possible. Just thinking that, maybe if you lose in the championship game, you can get in as a 2-loss team. If you have a great win like Georgia had last year over Notre Dame, didn't get them in. But, there's opening next season against Clemson and Charlotte. They've lined up games with Oklahoma, with Texas, with UCLA. Just, they're not shrinking from playing those other big boys, and neither are a lot of the other teams. It's kind of the way college football is going.
That's true. And okay, last question for you, Mark. The all SEC schedule. What two teams that's going to come to Athens you haven't seen in a while? Which two teams do you like to see come to Athens? They haven't played in 5 years.
Well, one of the games is going to be at home and one's going to be on the road. Georgia has seen LSU the last 2 years. They got their butt handed to them in Baton Rouge 2 years ago. And then last year, like everyone else, Joe Burrow and those receivers and that offense was too much for Georgia, and Georgia's offense was pretty lackluster. But Georgia hasn't hosted LSU since I think it was maybe 2014. Aaron Murray, Zach Mettenberger was a barn burner, a really good game. I don't think the SEC – I mean, you would think that they wouldn't schedule them to play 3 years in a row, but maybe they will for TV. We'll see how that plays out. But I'd like to see LSU between the hedges again in terms of, there's no one else from the West that really would really excite the fans probably as much as another game with LSU.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. You're actually familiar to this area in Baltimore and Washington. Are you a Orioles fan or a Nationals fan?
Well, I grew up an Orioles fan because there was no Nationals when I was growing up. And, I'm going to date myself. I used to go to the 33rd Street before Camden Yards. And I think I was at the second game ever at Camden Yards. But I'm a fan of both now. And I know you really shouldn't be. But, as a Washingtonian first, I guess, I'm an Orioles fan and a Nationals fan.
That's great. So, Mark, keep up the good work. And just tell everybody if they want to go read your stuff about Georgia, because I know there's a lot of Georgia fans in this area because there's a lot of alumni.
Sure. It's onlineathens.com. You can find our stuff there. And, Tom Crean, the Georgia basketball coach, is the brother-in-law of the Baltimore Ravens head coach, John Harbaugh.
Nice.
Yes, exactly. I saw him with Indiana, and he was so serious coach I ever seen. He was like, when he was coaching Indiana, he was like, you don't want to talk to him. He's like so focused on what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely caffeinated, very intense.
Exactly. All right, Mark. Thanks for coming on tonight, and I wish you and your family safe. And hopefully, we'll see some football in a month from now.
All right, good to be with you guys. Thank you.
Mark.
All right, see you, Mark. That's Marc Weiszer, who covers the Georgia Bulldogs down there in Athens, Georgia. Yeah, so it smells like football coming there, bud. Soon.
I hope so, buddy. I mean, there's so many unknowns heading into this season, but goodness, the country needs football. I don't even if they're fans, if there's a portion of fans, if they're half the stadium, we need it on TV. And if I don't know, Herbie, but I just think for the morale of the country and the world, we need football back.
Yeah. Well, I want to give some props to the NBA.
Yeah.
They are doing a fantastic job with this virus, keeping everybody in that bubble, and they're doing a great job. They have no positive tests in the bubble, so that's good. Yeah, they're doing a great job down there in Orlando.
Yeah, no question. I mean, it's great to see them. Obviously, precautions and health first, but it's great to see the association back on the hardwood.
And the idiot of the week goes to the Marlins, because I heard they had to go to a casino. I know you do a little casino off the side, but but they had to go to a casino in Atlanta to get the virus, and they brought it up to Philadelphia, and they didn't. They get tested on a Sunday, and and the Phillies are like, "Oh, we could play. It's okay." I was like, "Yeah, that's the idiot of the week right there." You're like, you realize that if you have the virus, there's no baseball.
Right. It's a tough situation, one that we haven't seen in our lifetime. Hopefully we'll never see it again. And hopefully we can come up with some therapeutics and everyone can kind of get back to normal living, if there is such a thing after this.
Yes. Well, we're waiting for the voice of the Carolina Panthers of the NFL, Mixon, joining us. He's a former Tar Heels broadcaster who used to work with West Durham's father, Woody Durham, up there in Chapel Hill. So if West Durham is watching or whatever he's doing, thanks for tuning in if you're watching to us. Yeah.
Herb, obviously I live in Charlotte, and there is just a kind of a new enthusiasm surrounding this team. And I wouldn't really call it hype. I would just call it a lot of great energy. And like I said, enthusiasm for this upcoming season. And just a lot of unknowns, a ton of new faces, and I think with that, a ton of new optimism.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you, dude. And you got this company. You got a lot of that going on down there.
Yeah. Well, I have to root for the hometown team, although I grew up in New York and I'm a diehard Giants fan, and then I lived 5 years in New Orleans, so I love my Saints too. But I'm hopeful. And hey, Matt Rule's that's something we're going to talk about Mick about. He's just had a line of success. So we'll see if that continues this upcoming season.
Yes. Well, next week on the program, we'll be on at 7:00 with this young lady we had on last year. We were going to do Rebecca Florentino. I think I said it, but I might butcher it. But she's going to join us next week. Live here on Uski and Herbie. We're going to talk Duke sports because she's back in getting ready for some football there as well. And Duke is playing Florida State again down there in Durham. So I guess I'll be seeing my Noles probably twice or three times this year. So that's Merry Christmas to myself.
Yeah, so you're making the road trip down to Durham. That's fantastic, Herb. I think I might come up from Charlotte and meet you there.
You and I could have some fun watching Florida State and Duke. Last time Duke played Florida State beat them there in Durham. It was a very close game, and we pulled it down in the fourth quarter with Blackman, who basically threw a touchdown pass to Akers, and that was the only touchdown of the game.
Yeah. It's going to be great to just get football back in any capacity.
Oh, yeah.
This is just all new, so it's very, very difficult. And we mentioned earlier in the broadcast that my alma mater, University of Connecticut, has just basically chosen to forego the football season entirely. And I don't know if we're going to see any other universities kind of follow suit. Mm-hmm. But, another thing we didn't talk about, Herb, and we can talk a little bit about this next week and certainly get Rebecca's thoughts on it, are, the Pac-12 players. Right. And, their demand for revenue sharing and things of that nature. So that is a huge – will that spread to other conferences? And if so, will it spread like wildfire? So this is an enormous topic in college football. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we want to welcome to the program the voice of the Carolina Panthers, who used to do some college football work up in Chapel Hill and up there in the University of North Carolina. Mick Mixon joining us. Mick, thanks for joining us. How's everything down there in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina? Ewan's probably right down the street from you.
Yeah, it's great, man. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate you reaching out to your humble, small market, almost forgotten about Carolina Panthers of the National Football League. And it's an honor to be on with Herbie that likes Neil Diamond and listened to Bob Murphy broadcast growing up. And, man, I just read a little bit about what you got going there. And I said, I have to put my vibrant social life on hold and carve out some time and come on the show.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, real quick before I got to ask you, what is your favorite Neil Diamond song? Do you have one? Like everybody plays Sweet Caroline or Cherry Cherry or whatever. Do you have one that Nick wants to play? And I heard that you have a band. We're going to talk about that later. But what song do you like to play?
Of course. I mean, the default, everybody will default to Sweet Caroline that he wrote, as everyone knows about Caroline Kennedy and how he was taken by her beauty and wrote that unbelievable song. But I'm going right. In fact, right before you had me on, I had Solitary Man playing through my head, which to me is one of the great, and I'm happily married, so don't get me wrong, it's not an anthem for my life, although it probably has been unintentionally during certain times of unintentional celibacy and whatnot years ago. But I'm going to tell you this, the Taproot Manuscript album. Now, if you got knowledge of Taproot Manuscript, I Am the Lion, songs like that, then I'm going to just absolutely build a statue to your honor down here in Charlotte.
Well, we're going to Mick Nixon Neil Diamond hour sometime later in the year.
Great. Oh my goodness. Hey Mick, before we get certainly a lot to talk about on the field, but we're a family here at HerbFM. I'm in Charlotte. I know cases have kind of got up. Give us a status update. How's the family doing? Everybody good and healthy?
At my address? Yeah, gosh, thank you for asking. Been very fortunate. My son by marriage is 32. His biological father, big muscle head, weightlifting, kind of former football player type dude, tatted up and all, lives out in Utah. He got it in a gym. He just couldn't wait to get under some barbells, and he got it, and his name's Leon Waddell. It knocked Leon back for about a week or 10 days or so, but his whole family got it, but fortunately they're okay. How about with the family up there in Baltimore, and of course you in Charlotte? I mean, hopefully your families hadn't been touched by this thing.
No, we're doing really good. I live with my girlfriend, and she has a bad immune system, so every time I go out, I take a shower. When I come home, throw the clothes downstairs, and I know it's a little erotic, but hey, she hasn't caught it at all, and she's doing a great job with this whole thing, and we're keeping it out of the house. My brother is going through some medical issues right now, my older brother, but he's doing fine. Parents are great. Everybody's doing great. We're keeping ourselves, well equipped with this whole situation.
It's so scary. I mean, our stadium, I'm talking to you now from this little studio apartment that my wife and I have about a block away from the stadium, and I can look out the window and see the AAA baseball stadium. Some guys are just tonight I saw some guys throwing and catching a little bit and some activity over there. Our stadium, I feel like I'm on an extra on The Walking Dead because it's immaculate. It's been scrubbed, sanitized, vacuumed. It's perfect, but there's no one there.
Right.
The business, most of the business offices, we got a few IT people. Of course, coaches and players are taking up most of the entire facility. But just to try to keep everybody safe, and I don't know, cautiously optimistic, I guess, somewhat encouraged that we'll be able to play some ball this fall. How are you guys reading the tea leaves on an NFL season?
Well, here in Baltimore, the Ravens they're not having anybody at practice, for training camp, and you're doing the Zoom calls and all that stuff. I think the same thing with what Carolina's doing. They're doing Zoom calls as well, and and they're cutting down, at M&T Bank Stadium how many people they might have this year. So my girlfriend's father, who has season tickets, may not be tailgating outside, or he might be tailgating and not going in, because he has a big tailgate thing he does before every Ravens game. They're Raven fanatics. I like Carolina and I like Kansas City because it used to be Joe Montana there back when I was a kid. So, so I got to throw that in there. I'm just weird. That's all it is. I'm a weird guy, But anyway, it's just we just have to. I think people need to realize they got to pay attention and do the 6 feet rule. Wash your hands, keep your, put the mask on. If they tell you to put the mask on, put it on, and it's going to be done sooner or later. It's okay. It's 1 year. It's not your whole life.
Feel the same way. I've got a couple buddies of mine that are, one friend of mine in particular that I've been good buddies with for 42 years, and he's one of these kind of, not anti-government, but he can kind of see it from where he is, and he's telling me, the government, they can't make me wear a mask and tell me what to do. And I said, I call him Chief. I said, Chief, they already kind of do. They tell you what side of the road to drive on, right, that your car has to have airbags in it. You got to pay taxes and 100 other things we could think of. So it's not going to hurt you, I don't think. So just wear a mask for Pete's sake. Exactly.
Well, let's talk about Carolina this year. Without preseason games, there are no preseason games whatsoever. Is that going to be good for, are we going to see more hard-hitting action during training camp and getting ready for that first game against the Raiders? Or what do you think about this no preseason game?
I put to you guys right now the intellectual horsepower that your show is known for. And so here I go. The no preseason game thing will actually help the brand new, taking it down to the studs Carolina Panthers. How'd you like to be the Raiders, John Gruden and company, trying to prepare a game plan for a team that you haven't even seen? No one has seen. No one has seen the 2020 Panthers. It's not like you could even look at Carolina getting oiled up in the preseason. You'll have to watch Temple tape. You'll have to watch Baylor tape. You'll have to pull Joe Brady, some of his stuff from New Orleans. Phil Snow, the D coordinator here, you'll have to make some educated but yet some guesses as to how the Panthers will attack and defend. Does that pass the smell test on the show, or am I totally crazy?
Absolutely, Mick. No question about it. That is an incredible facet because we always talk about, watching tape, getting prepared. Well, how can you get prepared? And not to mention, we have a ton of draft picks. And Mick, I wanted to ask you this before we really get into the meat and potatoes. I've been living down here for a decade, and despite Cam leaving and Matt Rule coming in, a ton of changes that we'll get into a little later in the show, but I just feel like there's a little bit of a new sense of enthusiasm surrounding this team. What is your sense when you talk to people with the new faces coming in and certainly the new leadership?
A little bit of a shock for some to kind of hit the reset button on the Divine 59. Luke Kuechly is no longer in uniform. That the iconic Cam Newton, the megawatt smile, the Pied Piper party that Cam Newton, even at FanFest, 50,000 people come out to FanFest to watch this exquisitely talented athlete basically go through a glorified pillow fight. But in all of what you're saying, I feel it too, and Panther fans with whom I correspond feel it. That the newness of it, the electricity of youth and energy, and that this defense is going to be twitchy and young and mad at it, and they may not know that they're not supposed to be very good right away. And offensively, with Teddy Bridgewater coming in, if I may, just for a second, take it to Teddy Bridgewater, because I like press conferences. I spent a big chunk of my professional life hanging out at press conferences, listening to questions. I love the sociology of a press conference. I love studying looking at how the reporters ask, how the athletes and coaches respond. So Teddy Bridgewater gets this question day before yesterday at a press teleconference. The reporter says, Teddy, a two-part question, if I might. Number one, how's your health? How's your injury rehab going? Number two, you were in Minnesota when George Floyd was killed in police custody. So how do you feel about that? And have you decided yet whether you're going to take a knee for the national anthem? So let's boil that down for a second. That's not a two-part question. It doesn't even meet the minimum standard for the definition of a two-part question. It's actually three separate questions. You got a softball followed by a couple of fastballs right at your chin. Is that fair?
Yeah.
This would trip up many seasoned athletes and coaches. Teddy Bridgewater has such poise and such grace. I couldn't believe it. He gets some air into his lungs for a second, and then he first talked about the injury, and he says, since I completed my rehab, I've not had one missed practice. I've not had one missed game. I've not had any pain, any discomfort. I'm doing great. Then he talked about George Floyd and how he was living up there when George Floyd was killed, and he himself had some correspondences with the Floyd family, and he hasn't yet decided. He's leaning towards taking a knee, but hasn't yet decided. Those are, I'm not doing his words justice, but just the maturity, the leadership. I mean, I got chills right now just talking to you about it. And I think what you're going to see is a Carolina Panther team that now is Teddy Bridgewater's to lead, and that his leadership voice is rung out throughout the entire building. And that if Teddy Bridgewater says, everybody turn to the left, everybody turn to the right, everybody do push-ups, jumping jacks, whatever, then that team's going to be on board.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I saw when he was, when he was down in New Orleans, he took over for Drew Brees for a month, and he was 5-0, and nothing bothered him. And then when he was up in New York with the Jets, I know he was sitting on the bench, but he's a good teammate. He was helping out everybody ready to go.
Quick release, intelligent, can make the first rusher miss, excellent leader, proven. He's proven himself in the league, and he's got that special strength of the truly disrespected, because I think Teddy Bridgewater, he got this question too, Teddy Bridgewater, like Cam Newton, feels like he has had to kind of get teams to fall in love with him all over again. And fortunately, the Carolina Panthers have.
Mick, that's an interesting point. And there's a lot to be made about expectations. And what I've heard a lot on local media is that, oh, you know what, it's going to take a couple of years, and maybe this is a rebuilding process. And do you think that people are underestimating the Panthers? And is it easier for guys like Teddy Bridgewater to come in with a chip on their shoulder, knowing that, hey, there's really not much expectations down here? He has personal expectations. But does that kind of maybe make him play better or maybe a little looser?
Yeah, I think the chip that will be about the size of Kings Mountain that will be on the shoulders of some of these guys. DJ Moore is another one who feels as if he is now ready to be great and take his place, his rightful place among the elite receivers in pro football. Christian McCaffrey cannot rest. He's not content with being a 2,000 yard guy. Now he'll want to join the 3,000 club or do something else phenomenal that no one thinks he can do. And then Matt Rule, you guys mentioned Matt Rule a little bit earlier. Do you know him? Have either of you met him or gotten a chance to form any opinions of Coach Rule?
Yeah, I covered Temple a long time ago, and I got a chance to talk to him on the teleconference calls. And he seems like a down home. He knows how to take care of the players. He seems like he's a player's coach for people. And what he did at Baylor that turned that whole nasty situation around to a positive now is going to be a positive Baylor this year instead of a couple of years ago with that Art Briles and all that garbage going on down there in Waco. He did a fantastic job down there turning that stuff around. He even did the same thing with Temple. Before he showed up, Temple never went to a bowl game since I think the last time they went there was 1978. Was the Garden City Bowl, at Giant Stadium. It's like he didn't. I think where he goes, he's a winner. And I feel like Carolina got a coach that I hope the Carolina fans could just give some time don't rush this guy. He's going to turn Carolina back into what Ron Rivera did a couple of years ago, and you might be knocking on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Mick, and you know what? I have actually watched every press conference. I've read everything I can, and there's one thing that concerns me when a coach goes from college to the pros, and that's his presence, because he's no longer talking to young men, no longer talking to parents, trying to sway them in. These are grown men, and everything that I've seen, this guy has a presence about him when he walks into a room. He's well-spoken. He's determined. And I believe in him, and more so than just his past record, I just think he knows what he's doing and he's got direction.
I've watched him very carefully too. Every time I've heard him speak, every time I've been eavesdropping on a teleconference, I've thought he's got a nice touch with being confident, but yet not being cocky, not preachy, and I love how he deflects to his family a lot and sort of defaults to what he doesn't know as opposed to what he does know. And I'll tell you this about Matt Rule. This is my prediction. I'm just one guy. I don't speak for the entire team, but I am the one who's on your show right now. So I predict that with all this talk, and it is great. It's great to say, Matt Rule, yeah, he's charismatic. He can win the room. Check. He can win the press conference. Of course. He could sell your own shoes back to you, and you feel like you've gotten a good deal, no doubt. Yeah. But the Panthers are going to be coached hard. There's a toughness there commingled with his effervescent personality that is going to, I think, make him one of the next big things in pro football.
Yeah. Is this team a playoff team or not a playoff team this year? Is it, first year, a lot of people because up here in Baltimore, John Harbaugh made it to the postseason with, in his first year, we had a guy named Joe Flacco taking over for Smith, who was the Heisman Trophy winner. Do you feel like they're going to be playoff or no?
A couple of months ago, I would have said, nah, probably not. I mean, it's kind of looking like 2-14, like 4-12. Let's get in position take your lumps, get in position to maybe draft a QB high in April of 2021. But then the Teddy Bridgewater signing, the Robbie Anderson signing, Tahir Whitehead comes on board. There's the draft with 7 for 7 on the defensive side of the ball. There's this excitement. There's this energy. There's the frailty of the human mind, how football kind of flirts with you and hikes up its skirt at the end of the bar and says, you can get me out on the dance floor and spin me around and it's going to be great. And so I find myself kind of falling for the intoxicating idea that maybe the Panthers could be good, better than expected right away. I have this talk with myself every year. Every year I say, no, not this year. This year I'm just going to go offense, defense, special teams. I'm way too old, way too seasoned to get out ahead of my skis on anything. But especially, the X in the equation is the virus. Does anybody think that it's going to be a fair season? It could be, could not be. It could be. Yeah. Could be if the Panthers could stay the healthiest, then anything's possible.
Mick, when I watch and I look at Matt Rule and the offense, part of me just wants to say, get Teddy in the shotgun, put Christian next to him, give me 3-4 wides, let's air it out. But I've heard two things from coaches. The first thing is when they make a change is, hey, this is what I've had success with. This is what I'm going with. And the other thing that I've heard is, hey, we got a whole new faces. We have to see what our talent is first and then implement our system around that talent. Offensively, obviously new quarterback, new changes. We were middle of the pack, 19th in offense, 20th in points scored. What do you see this offense looking like week 1?
I wish I knew. I'd love to be able to tell you that I had seen it, that I had seen even one practice, that I had scarfed through the trash bin at the stadium and discovered a Joe Brady playbook and had poured over it. If I had to guess, I'd guess it's probably going to have a lot of sight adjusts, a lot of shotgun, a one-back running game, shifts, motions, direction, misdirection. some route combinations where Teddy Bridgewater can see and process and diagnose and get the ball out of there quickly like he does. But I say all that, and I have to then put the footnote on it of I really don't know. I have no idea yet.
Well, we also found, we were doing some research last night. I know you and I talked a little bit on the air, yesterday because we were working on together. You and I, we found out that you played in a local band. So real quick, I got a clip that I found in my research this morning. This is really, I feel like Jay Leno. I had to go back to the Wayback Pile. So hold on, listen to this. So it's the Franklin Street Band. Are they getting back together again? Are you guys going on your reunion tour, or what's going on with that?
Well, thanks for mentioning the band. I love drums. I played drums my whole life. I always wondered as a kid why my parents drank so much alcohol. I used to think it was a character flaw on their part, but I realized it was probably me up there trying to go through Charlie Watts and John Bonham and Buddy Rich's entire career on my set of drums. Awesome. But my smoking hot wife is the lead singer, not only in my house and in my life, but in the Franklin Street Band. Her name's Dawn Thomas Mixon. I call her Donnie. That was her. That was a little outdoor kind of a live after five thing we played several years ago. But, it's a passion. Life kind of gets in your way and you get a little bit busy. But I am the original drummer and founder of the band Break, Wind, and Fire. And every once in a while I get a note about wanting to know when the Break, Wind, and Fire band is going to burst suddenly across the music scene again. So maybe someday Franklin Street and Break, Wind, and Fire and Mick and the Ultras, my other band, will have a reunion tour.
Yeah, I'll come down. I'll be like Dick Clark. You introduce you, like with the long microphone.
That'd be fantastic. We'll even play. Let's see, Cherry. I don't know. We'll play a Neil Diamond song for you.
Something like that. We'll be like, here we go.
Yeah. Great. Wow. So that's amazing. So I got to ask you. Herbie's fortunate. He's got a significant other. My dog is the only female that'll put up with me. I think Herbie's been trying to help me out with the dating apps, but I think I need to learn the drums. I mean, I don't know what to do now.
Well, this is the irony of life is that I was already scarcity breeds momentum, like I told Herbie. So the best way to attract attention from females is to already be married and not be able to do anything about it or with it.
Exactly. And you really, exactly. Well, I do have to ask you, okay, my nickname is Herbie because my brother gave it to me. I was, growing up. We got you one is Uski. How did you get your nickname? Because your first name is Forrest. How did you get your nickname? Mick.
Yes, my legal name is Forrest Orion Mixon III. Orion, like the constellation, Orion. And my dad, of course, was Forrest Orion Mixon Jr., and they wanted to name me something different to be different from my old man. So they just came up with Mickey, Mick or Mickey. I was called Mickey for most of my life throughout until I had graduated from college. And then I had a news director at a radio station in Columbia, South Carolina, call me in and say, from now on, you're going to be Mick Mixon on the air. Mickey sounds too much like a kid and you're too young, and I shouldn't have hired you any damn way. Now get out of here.
Wow.
Wow. What a story. Unbelievable. Well, Mick, I got to tell you, it's been an absolute, pleasure. And, of course, we want to just mention, first and foremost, continued health and safety to you and yours. And it's just an absolute pleasure to have you on the program. So much unknown heading into the season, something unprecedented we've never seen in our lifetime. But, Herbie and I were talking before we got on the air, and, it's great to have baseball. It's great to have basketball. But I feel like football is just a different kind of animal. The world needs a kind of a rallying cry, and the way sports can bring people together you just sometimes can't put into words, and we need football. So, that being said, Herbie, I'll throw it to you to say goodbye, but thanks so much for being so gracious with the time this evening.
I lost you there a little bit at the end, so I just had to look and make sure you had stopped talking before I started talking. But I assumed that what you were saying was, Mick, you're the greatest guest that we've ever had on the show, and I hope you can come back again soon.
You got me pegged. There it is.
No, I lost you at the world needs football, but that's not the worst idea I ever heard. It's not life its own self. It is the candy store, but it is a way that we come together in the American South. Football isn't just what we do; it's part of who we are. So let's get back together soon.
Well, if you're in the Carolinas, you can listen to Mick on the flagship station WBT 1110 AM. I think that's in Charlotte, or on the Carolina Panther Radio Network throughout the state of North Carolina and South Carolina. Maybe one day we'll put it up here in Maryland, so you never know. If we had the money, and we'll put you on. But we also want to say thank you to you, and Uski and I want to say thank you for joining us tonight, and hope you and your family are safe, and hopefully you like this last song I'm going to play for you here on the program. Little Cracklin' Rosie.
Cracklin' Rosie, store-bought woman. You make me feel like a guitar humming.
Hey, we'll talk to Neil Diamond anytime. So thanks for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mick.
Great being on your show, man. Thanks for having me on. You guys stay in touch.
All right, you too. All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot.
All right. That's Mick Nixon, the voice of the Carolina Panthers, a big Neil Diamond fan. See, Nicole, there's a lot of Neil Diamond fans out there, okay?
That's funny. Oh, my goodness. That's classic, man. What a great interview.
Text message. I'm waiting for a text message, from her saying, like, yeah. So it was great talking to him. It was great to, I hope I didn't embarrass him about the flashback clip. I feel like.
No, he loved it. Are you kidding me? I want someone to do a flashback with me. Are you kidding me?
Hey, if this show becomes successful, we'll have the flashback of this one. Look at the low budget that we did back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely, Herbie.
Well, it's 7:57 here on the Uski and Herbie show, and I want to say a shout out. I found this out last week when I was on vacation. I want to say hello to a little town in Virginia. Okay, Ewan. They have been listening to us all week last week. 90% of our programming has been listened to this little town called Hello, Washington, Virginia.
How about that?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I was like, where in the world is Washington, Virginia? It's a little town in the Rappahannock County in the state of Virginia, and they love us. So
hey, we love them back. We got a road trip it out there, man.
I know. Hopefully, we'll probably get there and we'll be like David Hasselhoff and be one kind of famous people in that town.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, let's give you some scores real quick. The Orioles lost to the Marlins 1-0 in 7. They're playing a 7-inning doubleheader and a 7-inning doubleheader, 2 games today. And the only thing I don't know about is Phillies have a 11-7 lead on the Yanks, but the Yanks, the Yankees, Bronx Bombers, they're coming back. Yeah, Aaron Judge has just begun, showing some, you're judged, you're out the door. He's been hit. He's on fire.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Basketball score, real quick. Philadelphia beat the Wizards today, 107-98 down there in the bubble. And real quick, the Islanders lost to the Panthers, Florida 3-2 to still lead the series 2 games to 1, and Tampa Bay beat Boston 3-2 was the final. So in the meantime, let's bring in this gentleman who's been a fixture of this program since we started doing video. We had him on when we did the phone thing. David Waters, who covers the Gators down there in Jacksonville, Florida. First thing, David, no Florida State Florida game this year.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with myself.
That one stings a little bit.
I know. I don't know what to do with ourselves. So this is the first time Florida and Florida State haven't played each other since the governor of Florida told them they had to in 1958. So I guess you can't get the governor involved. Yeah, so I guess we have to wait until next year. Or can they be in a bowl game, play each other in a bowl game? We did that in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, maybe so. with everything going on, I still have my doubts bowl games happen besides the college football playoff. If there's still somewhat of a question when the season ends of coronavirus and COVID and its effect, then and all that, I can see bowl games going by the wayside and just the college football playoff being played. I think we'll see some bowl games, and we've already seen there's 40-something bowl games, 41 bowl games, something like that. One has already decided they're not going to have a bowl game. I forget which one it is, but
the one in San Francisco, they said bye-bye to the Red Box Bowl.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So one bowl game gone. I don't think it'll be the last. You still may get your New Year's Six games or something like that. So if it is the Sugar Bowl, maybe you can see, Florida State has a better season than many are expecting. Maybe you do have a Florida State in a bowl game. Believe me, if they don't play in the regular season like it's scheduled to be, the Sugar Bowl will eat that up. They'll be like, okay, there's a lot of memories of these two teams playing in New Orleans in the 90s. If we can get Florida State to be in New Orleans when they can't play in the regular season, believe me, they'll try anything in the world to make that happen.
Yeah, no doubt, because the revenue sharing and the fans, where they play, the fans come, no question. David, we talked a little bit on air. I went to UConn, and there was an announcement today that UConn is just we're basically foregoing the season. Do you think that might – I mean, obviously we're not, an upper echelon team. We don't have the kind of revenue coming in. We don't have the television contracts. But do you see that this could be maybe a ripple effect for smaller programs?
I do. The problem is, especially if they can't play these big games where they get their money from.
Right.
That's the issue. So are you putting yourself if there's not a large TV contract and you're not getting money that way, you're not getting money through attendance, is it going to cost you more in the long run to actually play games when you're not getting those big paychecks that you're used to getting when you go and play an SEC, Big Ten, ACC school? I can see that. In the end, if they're not getting the big money contracts, then they could actually, in a way, save some money by not having to travel and all that stuff. So, I know they'd love to play. I know they love it for their players. I mean, you don't want all these student athletes that are there missing on an opportunity to play. So I don't think it'd be a big number. Put it this way, if we start seeing a big number of schools do that, then everybody else is going to cancel too. That means things are trending the wrong way, and it'd just be a matter of time before all the bigger programs start doing it as well.
Well, I think UConn is in that tri-state up there in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and they've been fighting that virus since March 11th, 12th, and it's been a battle up there. And I think New York got it under control. I think New Jersey got it a little bit under control, but I don't know about UConn getting it under control. Plus, you got travel bans. If you go down to the state of Florida, you got to be. Are they really checking people out of state if you're from Connecticut or New York or New Jersey and sending them back home?
They were doing that. If you came down I-95 and as soon as you crossed the Georgia-Florida state line, you had to get, because me and my family we went to Georgia probably twice in the last couple months, and one time we had to go through that line. It wasn't the best. They just asked where we were from, and we said Georgia. We said Florida, and they just told us to go right through. Now, if we had a different license plate, would they have chased us down? I don't know. But, a lot of people probably weren't truthful in answering that. So, but all that's gone. No, they're not doing that anymore. It would be a little bit easier. But, of course, if you said a team had to get on a plane and fly down, I'm sure they're getting checked before they get on the flight. I'm sure they're getting checked when they get off the flight because they're in a different state. So I think the protocols would have been there, but I guess it is asking a lot in UConn's situation to go travel, especially being as an independent. They'd probably have to travel, pretty long distances just to get a game played.
Yeah, I think they had a couple games in the ACC. I think one was Virginia, and I think they had one against Clemson, and then they had to go all over the map, Liberty and all that stuff. So. Yeah, they're probably just happy they're not going anywhere. They can save that funds for next year.
Hopefully we'll get some talent in. David, we talked about programs. There's a lot of noise coming out of the Pac-12 with players out there. And there's players that are opting out. There's players that are opting out in the NFL. Do you think? And another thing I wanted to ask you about, David, is the non-conference games have been eliminated, but Herbie and I were talking about. Before we got on the air, and I just mentioned that out of conference games for the SEC I feel is a little different because they're the strongest conference in college football, and those games are 90% of the time they could be cupcakes. But what are your thoughts about that?
I'm not a big cupcake fan. To me, I've been
More of a cloudy guy?
Real cupcakes I like. Don't get me wrong. The cupcake games, yeah. The cupcake games. I'm just not a big. I've been a proponent. I've been wanting the SEC to go to 9 conference games. The only time I've really got ever excited in Dan Mullen's tenure of a cupcake game was the very first game he coached, just because it was his first game. But besides that, it's just it's good for young players to get involved. It's good for those little. I mean, the little schools need it. They absolutely need it. They need that money to survive and fund their school and fund their programs. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're going away, but I would like to see less of them. So. I won't miss the cupcake games. I will miss Florida State. That was expected. That was the biggest uproar when the SEC announced last week of a 10-game conference schedule that, hey, Florida State's not going to play. And how come it makes sense Florida can go travel to Missouri, or Missouri can come travel to Florida, right. Or, Clemson and South Carolina can't play, but they can travel halfway across the country just to play a conference opponent. And I know that the conferences talk, and the SEC was like, well, we know our own testing protocols, and that goes a long way. And then one thing, I'm on Bill King's show every Tuesday. He's a big-time college football guy in Nashville. And, what he could gather was the contract that the SEC had with all the smaller out-of-conference schools. There's language in there that if something's out of their control, like COVID, cancels the games, then they would not have to pay those buyouts to all those little schools. So, But the thing is, if you cancel all those other out-of-conference games, then you also have to cancel Florida State, Clemson, South Carolina, because it doesn't look right if you say, hey, we can't play these teams, but we can play that team. So with the language in the contract, it was either all or nothing. You're going to play these out-of-conference games, or you're not going to play any of them.
We're not going to see Florida taking on Idaho?
Florida had because of Jim McElwain, Florida was opening up with Eastern Washington. That was when Florida had a contract to get Jim McElwain as their head coach. Part of the deal was to play Eastern Washington one season, and that was who Florida was going to open up with this year.
I just love these non-conference schedules. Like Florida State, we're taking on Stanford, Stanford is not Stanford and in California, the other one. Yeah, and we almost lost to them last year. Yeah, and my brother was calling me at like 4 a.m. going, "Are you okay?" Like they thought I was on suicide watch. I'm like, not yet. Yeah, I'm like maybe in the morning. Yeah, but they pulled it out. But those kind of conference games are funny to watch. Like you get Florida. Sometimes they play Hawaii. Yeah, before the Florida State game, it's like all right, you got the 4th string taking on the Rainbows. Or whatever they call them, the Warriors out there now. And like it's like at halftime it's 56-0. And I'm like, what's the purpose? Yeah.
That's how those little schools survive this. I won't say necessary evil, but it's a necessary occurrence that has to happen.
Yeah, and David, the revenue that those smaller schools get to take those games away could really decimate a program because they're counting on that money. I mean, this has never happened in our lifetime. It will probably, hopefully, God willing, never happen again. But that effect on college football, I mean, we're going to see ripples for more than just this year. But, David, what do you think? Very big, prominent players. I think I forget his name, the Ohio State wide receiver, touted to be an All-American, just said he's going to opt out of this season and just enter the draft next year. But, do you foresee more of that stuff happening? And could players potentially quit mid-year and just sit out?
I think we'll see it more. It was something I brought up pretty early on in the process of, if COVID didn't get better by the time the season started, could we see guys who have NFL aspirations, and especially if you're a first-round NFL pick? If you're in the first round, second round, do you see a lot of worth in going to play a football season, one who many think even if it does get started, you may not finish? a season. So do they go out there and take the risk in preseason camp while they're practicing in 100-degree weather? Do they see the risk? Now, I think if you have a team like if you have a Clemson, an Ohio State, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, LSU, teams that have national championship aspirations, and maybe you don't see those players do it, but like a team like Iowa State, nobody's really predicting them. They're good, but nobody's really predicting them to win the Big Ten and go make a college football playoff push. So I think maybe with those schools that don't necessarily have college football playoff aspirations and do have high-level talent in certain spots on their teams, those players absolutely could decide to check out and save themselves for the NFL draft. So, for Florida, there's a couple players that come to mind. Kyle Pitts, first-round talent tight end for the Gators. Marco Wilson, pretty highly rated cornerback. Maybe Kyle Trask at quarterback. I think he needs another season to kind of maybe prove his NFL worth, but he's on draft boards right now. So, it could hit Florida. And then Florida, had some players on social media this past weekend. Kadarius Toney and Jacob Copeland talking back and forth about maybe opting out, health before football and all that kind of stuff. So, just even keeping a close eye on it personally, just for the Gators, just because you see some players out there on social media talking about it.
Yeah, and also if they opt out, you have to go with the film back in 2019 because there's no film of 2020 on them. So if you're the NFL scout or an NFL executive, you're going to watch 2-year-old tape. So
if they do it, you hope they're doing it for the right reasons. You hope they got good feedback. You hope they went through the process all the way just to make sure they're making the right decision.
Exactly. So David, talk about with this whole SEC schedule. Is there a team that the Gators haven't played in so much in 5 years that you would love to see them come to the Swamp for the first time in 5 or 6 years?
It would be Alabama, but Florida's scheduled to play Alabama in the Swamp next year, and Gator fans and myself personally, I want that game to be with 100% capacity. I don't want it to be pushed ahead to this year and fans can't go enjoy that game. If it happens, it happens. We have to deal with the hand that's dealt. But I want that game to be scheduled in 2021 like it is, when everybody's ramped, ready to go, and the Swamp is 90,000 strong, and fans are close to each other, screaming their heads off. That's what college football is about, and Gator fans have been looking forward to that Alabama game for years. But yeah, Alabama is a team. Florida is looking to play. Played them in the SEC championship game a couple times in the Jim McElwain, but Florida's better than they were back then. So you like to have a chance now. Another storyline that's out there is Felipe Franks transferred to Arkansas. Can Florida go play Arkansas this coming up year, and you have Kyle Trask versus Felipe Franks, who was just the quarterback last year for the Gators, and a unique storyline there. Florida recently played Mississippi State a couple years ago, but that's where Dan Mullen come from. Still a unique storyline there, especially with Mike Leach coming in this year for his first year too. So Florida got to play Auburn last year, so that was one team that Florida hadn't played in a while that hadn't been on the schedule, and we got to see that game last year. So Alabama comes to mind, Texas A&M. Florida just played them a couple years ago too. So Florida already has Ole Miss on the schedule. It had been a while since Florida played Ole Miss, so that game was already on the schedule. So really, Alabama's the one team, but they were scheduled for next year anyway.
I think Texas A&M will be great because Jimbo Fisher has a 7-2 record against Florida. And I know the Gator fans want some revenge because of Jimbo. I know that. Yeah. So, well, David, tell everybody where they can follow you. Yeah, you're on Twitter. It's GatorDave_SEC on Twitter, and then you do a show in Jacksonville. How's that show going right now?
No, pretty good. Everybody can catch it on YouTube. I'll be in about 15 minutes. Be going live on YouTube for our weekly episode there. So Gators Breakdown live on YouTube, and that'll be out in podcast platform. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that stuff. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Gators Breakdown. So all that stuff will be out there coming up soon.
All right, cool. Well, Dave, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you. Hopefully, we'll check in with you at the SEC and see how everything the Gators are doing and throughout this football season.
Yeah, hopefully we have some actual football to talk about.
Exactly. Thanks,
right,
Dave.
Thanks, man. All right, that's David Waters, who covers the Florida Gators, my brother's favorite team. So, let's always have the rival on my program. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, my brother Matt is a big Gators fan, and him and I don't go toe to toe like my brother Will and I with Miami. Yeah, so
It's
yeah.
hilarious.
That's the life of the Heidells, It should be a mini series like Seinfeld, or yeah. So anyway, it's 8:15. You see the scores. The bottom line, the Yankees couldn't pull it out in Game 1 of the doubleheader. They lost 11-7, and the Mets and Nationals. Mets have a 3-1 lead. Matt Scherzer left the game early with an injury. So,
wow. Yeah. Wow. That's a big injury for the Natties.
Yeah, speaking of injuries, this guy doesn't leave any program, any Clemson game with no injuries whatsoever. He plays hurt. He plays,
You know that about him. He's a gamer.
If he's on the 15-day DL, he gets off and he goes to rehab assignments, like softball and track and field, and we're talking to our good friend Trevor Gross, who we love your photograph on the program.
Oh, it's me. I assumed you were talking. I assumed you were talking about me there, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, I'm talking about you. You never take a day off. You're always you're like Cal Ripken of Clemson sports. You're the Iron Man.
Absolutely, the Iron Man of South Carolina. The pandemic be damned.
Exactly. No, Trevor, real quick. I heard a story yesterday about Clemson. They're losing money. How are they losing money when they just? I heard this report yesterday up here in the sports station up here in Baltimore that they need more donations or else they're going to be cutting things down. What's your take on that?
To be honest, I don't really know much about it, but
Okay.
it doesn't surprise me to hear that being reported. I mean, I think that's just kind of the way of things in this landscape across the board. It's going to be institution by institution, trying to figure out how they're going to cope with reduced revenues and trying to adjust their budgets, especially in their athletic departments. So. Clemson does not have as many sports as a lot of the bigger Power 5 institutions, and so I think a lot of people would be surprised. A lot of people, for one thing, just assume that Clemson's a private school, which it is not. It's a public land grant school. But it's also a small school. The enrollment's actually doubled since I was an undergrad, but it's still at about 26,000 right now, which is obviously significantly smaller than some of the other major football powerhouses like Ohio State, Texas A&M, and so forth. So, obviously, athletic budgets are going to be a concern going forward in the next year or two. From the fallout from all this pandemic continues, but we'll just have to wait and see how that affects Clemson financially.
Trevor, it's so rare that we have something like this that, quite frankly, depending on what part of the country you're in, what your program status is like. We were talking a little bit about how UConn just pretty much forego that this season in terms of football. I don't know about their other athletics.
Sure.
It's kind of crazy because when we think college football, at least when I think college football, I think, hey, the same rules apply to everyone, the same kind of guidelines. But this is, this is uncharted territory.
Exactly.
We can't tell the future, but as of right now, everyone's coming to school. What is Clemson's plans as of right now in terms of athletically?
Well, this is kind of an appropriate timing for this chat because actually, as we speak, Clemson's having the Tigers are weighing in on campus. They're conducting their annual weigh-in, which signifies the beginning of August camp. They're holding their first practice tomorrow afternoon at 4:00. And so it's just business as usual as far as football goes. Well, obviously, that's kind of tongue in cheek. I mean, it's obviously anything but business as usual. But as far from a scheduling standpoint, that not a lot's changed. I mean, they're beginning camp just about the same time as they would have, in a normal season. It's just amazing to think that we're a month away from the scheduled start of the ACC season. we don't even know the dates of any of the games. Right. We don't know when the opener is going to be. We don't even know how many fans are going to be allowed in attendance, if any. Clemson is yet to make an announcement on any of that, and so we're just playing the wait and see game. But obviously, from a media standpoint, we're all going to have to get used to how this affects us in terms of our coverage. I mean, ordinarily. Forget about, ACC media days that, was obviously canceled, and Dabo's annual media golf tournament, which we would have had a couple weeks ago. But tomorrow, ordinarily we'd be going to watch some of practice and talk to Dabo after practice, but instead it's all going to be conducted virtually, at least for the time being. So we're just going to have our interviews via Zoom. Online with Dabo after practice tomorrow, and then with players on Friday. So, I, just like you guys, and everybody else, I'm just waiting and to find out how this is all going to play out. At least, finally, in the past week, we've actually, had something to talk about just in terms of knowing what the Power Five, with today's Big Ten announcement, we finally know what all the Power Five conferences are going to do. Although we still don't know dates of all the games, at least we have some kind of idea what the format's going to be.
Yeah, Trevor, talk about this no South Carolina game for the first time since I don't know when you guys never played.
1909.
1909. But this, what I was reading, and you and I were talking on Facebook. You said this is actually what's a state law that these two teams have to play. What did the governor of South Carolina say about this whole thing?
That wasn't me. I don't. It sure seems like a state law, but I don't think that's actually written into the legislature. But it seems that way. I mean, and obviously, all these in-state rivalries are very meaningful to their constituents, and but here in the Palmetto State, especially, we have no pro sports. This is one of those states you come out of the womb and you're either a Tiger or a Gamecock, by birthright. And so for them to cancel that, I mean, they've played that game. They've met on the gridiron through other pandemics, the Spanish flu in 1918. They've met through they played through wars, and every year for 111 years. And by the way, the only reason it wasn't the longest uninterrupted rivalry in the country is because between 1902 and 1909, they halted the rivalry because of riots between the fan bases. So that just gives you an idea of how meaningful and passionate that rivalry is for the people in the state. Not just for the students and alums, but for everybody that lives here. And for them to, and I have to say, I was really shocked and disappointed with the SEC. When the ACC came forth with its announcement that they were going to have the 10 conference games plus the one non-conference game, it was obvious that the only reason that Swofford allowed that was in order to preserve those 4 ACC-SEC rivalry games. Right. I mean, it was even written in that they had to be inside the non-conference game had to be inside that state in order for them to play. So, here's the ACC saying, "Okay, SEC, we're opening an invitation to you. We're opening the door for you to keep these rivalries alive." And then 24 hours later, the SEC just drops the bombshell that they're only going to play conference games. So, for a conference that preens itself as being, the greatest football conference ever, and their motto is "It just means more." I just found that pretty disappointing and shocking that they would back down from the ACC's challenge. And of course, supporters and Commissioner Sankey and supporters of the SEC will cite the pandemic and say that it's all about safety and all about travel and blah blah blah, but it really doesn't make any sense from that standpoint, because the ACC has every bit of the challenges and concerns as the SEC. And in fact, from a travel standpoint, the SEC has Florida playing Missouri, and that's 1,000 miles between those two schools. If you add up the round trip of all 4 ACC-SEC games, round trip, it's only 800 miles. So 200 miles less, 1,200 miles less than the round trip from Mizzou to Florida. So it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And very disappointing as a fan of college football and a resident of the state for that to happen. And I know that you're a longtime Florida State fan, and I'm sure people down in Florida are equally disappointed. Now, I will say for the record, it's been reported that the University of South Carolina actually fought to keep the Clemson game on the schedule, and they did everything they could. But ultimately, it wasn't up to their administration; it was up to the SEC.
Yeah. Well, I heard from our good friend from Notre Dame, the schedule is going to come out tomorrow. The ACC is going to come out with the schedule and the dates and all that stuff. Do you want me to get you on next week? We could dissect what Clemson got to go through for the ACC schedule. I think they might be a prime time game against Notre Dame to start first game of the year, probably.
Absolutely, yeah. It's obviously interesting, and I don't know if I'd mentioned it to you, but over a month ago, when the Big Ten and Pac-12 announced that they were playing conference-only games, obviously that eliminated 3 of Notre Dame's big games on their schedule, and they had 6 ACC games on their schedule. So I said way back then, boy, Swofford and the ACC have Notre Dame over a barrel. They should really use this as an opportunity to force Notre Dame to join the ACC, not just for this season, but permanently. Because if it's been a long time objective of Swofford and the ACC to get Notre Dame to finally join and commit for football. They have for every other sport, obviously. And this is finally the opportunity. It seemed to me. If they're ever going to join, it's going to be because of a situation like this.
Right.
And Swofford had the opportunity to say, "You're on your own. If you don't join the ACC, good luck to you. You've got 3 games on your schedule. You're going to lose an entire season of football. You're going to lose tens of millions of dollars. No bowl game, all that TV revenue and exposure. No playoff." So he could have said that to them, and I don't know if any kind of overtures were made under the table, but behind closed doors. But we all know that this is a one-time deal. So I feel like Swofford really let them off the hook, even though Notre Dame is sharing very very magnanimously sharing their NBC TV revenue for this 1 year with all the other ACC schools, but. I feel like he kind of let them off the hook because they really would have been, up a creek for the 2020 season if the ACC had excluded them like all the other conferences have done. But it's going to be very interesting to say the least because now you have Clemson playing in South Bend, and then everybody's already kind of penciling in Clemson against Notre Dame in the ACC championship game as well. Incidentally, Clemson's schedule, I think, got a lot harder due to the changes because you had not only potentially that second Notre Dame game, but also a game in Blacksburg against the Hokies. So you're playing at South Bend, at Blacksburg, at Tallahassee this season. So definitely a tougher road to hoe for the Tigers than it was last year. But, yeah, I'd love to be on next week. And as I said, the Tigers are starting camp tomorrow, so we can do a little position analysis and breakdown of the football team as well.
Awesome.
All right, cool. All right, Trevor, thanks for coming on, buddy, and enjoy practice tomorrow, or the virtual practice you're going to see with Coach Dabo. And hopefully we'll talk to you next week when we get the schedule out for the ACC, and we'll see how everything's going to pan out.
All right, guys. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Trevor.
All right, Trevor. That's Trevor Groves, our good friend from CUTigers.com. And speaking of that's the end of the show there, bud. Thanks for all our great guests to join us tonight. I know we have a brand new fan in Mick Mixon, who is the voice of the Carolina Panthers, who love Neil Diamond, and we might have a Neil Diamond hour with him soon.
Oh, goodness. Hey, great show tonight.
I was trying to
do it again.
I found Crackin' a Rosie because that song is on Taproot Manuscript. So
how about that, huh?
Yeah.
Great show tonight. Thanking all our guests. Mick Mixon, David Walters, just a fantastic. Of course, Trevor, and look forward to do it. Same bat time, same bat channel next week, Herbie.
Yep, 7:00 here on HerbFM Sports Radio on the StreamYard, and we'll talk some Big Ten next week. We'll talk to see how Big Ten's doing with their schedule, and we'll dissect some Penn State, Rutgers, and whatever we got. Michigan. See how how that's going to pan out.
Awesome, sounds good, Herbie. Great job tonight, and so long from Charlotte, North Kakalaka.
All right, and folks, so long tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm not going fishing. Here's Paul McCartney. So have a great evening, everybody, and thanks for tuning us in.
To the lonely Lorelei.